Today, we're going to be talking about how to plan and plot and prepare for an RPG. I'm going to be focusing this primarily on how to do it for D&D, but some of this obviously is going to be applicable to other RPGs. But I definitely cut my teeth running games in D&D around the second half of 3rd edition and then into 4th. And then around the beginning of 5th, I started doing other RPGs, and I, of course, took the lessons that I had learned with me. And, everyone's got their different styles, no two people are going to run the game the exact same way. And so, this is not how to do it in my style, but this is sort of principles and methods that I use to help construct a story that is interactive, that gives the players agency with regards to the direction that things go, while still allowing you, the game master, to prepare for things appropriately, avoid railroading, etc. In regards to railroading specifically, railroading is definitely given a very negative connotation in the modern gaming community. Back in the day, it used to be a lot more common and accepted. And when I say back in the day, I mean like before I even was playing D&D. Nowadays, it really feels like everyone expects a sandbox, which is not necessarily reasonable. Not everyone is very good at running a sandbox, and sandbox style games are not even necessarily a great way to tell any particular story. Sometimes you want a more focused, directed kind of story that the players can engage with. So there is a balance to strike there. And I think the way that I do it strikes that balance, and this is how that is. I show up to each session with an idea of what sorts of things the party is going to encounter. The people, got a freaking ice cream truck driving by, so enjoy the musical accompaniment in this episode. This is my musical episode, apparently. There it goes. So I know what sorts of people and situations and obstacles the party might encounter. I don't necessarily know how those are going to play out. Generally speaking, I tend to know my players. I have an idea, the most likely outcomes, and I'll maybe do a little bit of extra prep work for that. But I don't know if the party's going to pick a fight with somebody. So I'm going to be ready if they do. Which doesn't necessarily mean coming up with combat stats for every single NPC, but some NPCs are non-combatants, and the party can do with them what they will. But those creatures that are supposed to be combatants, I will probably have stat blocks for them. Depending on whether or not they are supposed to be an ally or an enemy, will change the way that I design their stats. You design creatures and mechanics for the purpose that they are supposed to serve in the story. And yeah, little drip of sweat right there. Yep. It's still autumn, not summer, autumn. Yes, that's correct. So what I don't do explicitly is I don't say, all right, the party's going to run into this, and then they're going to do this, and they have to do this to get through, and here's how you solve this problem, and here's the solution to this riddle, and here's how you get through this door. I don't do that. I may have in my mind a few obvious solutions to various obstacles, but I don't want to ever, well, not never. I usually don't want to sort of corral the players into one specific solution to any given problem or situation. Let me give you an example. In the previous, in the last game that I ran, the party has encountered an elf village. This village is very isolated. No one is allowed to leave because they are under siege by a creature known as the Witch of the Webs. And the elders of the village and the priests not serve, but they revere a entity known as Zul'Ratha, a god of death, who created this creature for reasons that are unknown. And so it's this sort of placating, we worship Zul'Ratha so that he does not kill us kind of situation. if you run into a high priest of a god of death and the god of death is a bad dude, there's a high likelihood that players are going to like attack that guy. The players are going to find a reason to say, you don't need to be here anymore. We're taking you down. And my players did not do that. So I didn't come into this situation with the assumption that the players are going to do any particular thing, or that a specific fight is going to happen, or that, anything like that. What I did was I knew what the party was going to encounter. And I had some ideas about goals, motives, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and crack this door so we get a little bit of breeze. Oh yeah, that breeze though. So, what I'm saying is, don't railroad the players. But that said, if in the metaphor where the campaign is a train, trains do need tracks. They need rails to get somewhere. But if you put down all the rails, the players have no choices about where they're going to go. So what I do instead, to extend the metaphor of, putting rails down for the train, I set destinations. I set okay, at some point we're going to get here, and some point we're going to get here, and some point we're going to get here. And we together decide how we're going to get to those locations. And so we're laying down the tracks as we go. Sometimes I'll even straight up ask my players, all right, for my own preparation's sake, what are you planning on doing with this situation, whatever it is that we're wrapping up a game with? At the end of the game, I'll ask them what they plan to do so that I can prepare for that. And this is, of course, assuming that we are running a preparation style RPG and not a no prep game like Blades in the Dark or Powered by the Apocalypse or something like that. Those I might just show up having not thought once about it since the last session, which is nice. But I come up with characters and obstacles. I try hard not to come up with solutions. I try hard not to come up with because I used to do this. I used to say all right, I do a series of branching if-thens, and that's how I would design an adventure or a little arc in a story. And that doesn't work out for me anymore. It's way too much work, and by design, most of it goes unused. There's no point in doing that. So what I do instead, I think, is a much more balanced approach, where I as the GM, I'm responsible for creating obstacles and for putting the bad guys into the world. And so some of these characters are bad guys. And I think, some of them I'm going to include with the full knowledge that there's almost certainly no way that they're going to get out of here without fighting this guy. Or, an enemy will attack them first. That happens sometimes. But for the most part, characters and situations just kind of are. And the player characters enter the scene and they disrupt the norm, or they disrupt what is expected for the most part, depending on the campaign. And so that will change the equation for these characters, and they may react to the very presence of the players, or they may try to dissuade them. They may try to recruit them. They may try to resist them. They may try to, bully them a little bit, depending on what kind of characters they are. But what they aren't going to do is follow a script. I don't at any point say, if the party does X, then this character will do Y. Because it's all context dependent, isn't it? I don't pre-script dialogue anymore. I used to do that. I used to have paragraphs of responses in case the party asked about specific things. I don't do that anymore. I just have a general sense of how much each NPC knows about a given subject. And I think this is a pretty good way to generate a campaign as you go. It avoids railroading because I don't know what's going to happen in the session. I've straight up told my players, they give me a hard time about, disrupting my plans. I'm like, what plans do you think that I have? Do I look like a kind of guy who's got a plan? Because I don't show up to the game with a plan. I show up to the game with ideas. And how the party interacts with those ideas kind of is the point of the game. We play to find out what happens. That's one of the the core principles, the what is it called? The best practices that is listed in a lot of newer RPG books, such as Blades in the Dark. There's new, I say newer, the newer generation of RPGs, Blades in the Dark, Powered by the Apocalypse, these kinds of story-based games. They're very emphatic about how we play to find out. We don't go into the game knowing what's going to happen, and then it's just a matter of doing it. That's terrible. That's railroading, and that's bad. That's the worst kind of railroading. So I would encourage you not to do that. Show up to the game with ideas. Like, here's a cool scene that I have in my pocket, ready to use if I need it. Here's a cool enemy. Maybe the party will fight them. If they don't, I get to reuse these stats somewhere else. You know, I can put that back in my pocket for another time. Maybe a whole other campaign. I'm very much in favor of recycling unused material. If the party doesn't interact with something, they don't engage with it, then sure, that's still new in Wrapper. You can reuse that. Don't go into a session knowing what's going to happen or thinking you know what's going to happen, because you know what's going to happen then. I can tell you what's going to happen then. The party's going to do something different. They're going to do something unexpected, and they're going to throw you off. They're going to rock that train right off of the rails, because that's what players do. And then where are you going to be when you've decided what's going to happen, and now what's going to happen doesn't make sense anymore? Then you have to improvise. Then you have to scramble for a solution. Don't set yourself up for that kind of failure. My players cannot disrupt my plans because I have no plans. My players can do crazy things and maybe, something completely unexpected. But because my prep work is not a bunch of if-thens and a bunch of like, we are definitely going to do this, I know what the other characters in the scene want. I know what the environment is set up to do. That is a much more versatile, a much more powerful way to adapt to unknown situations, such as those that player characters famously bring about.